Welcome, welcome, welcome. And most definitely glad to have you. I appreciate and show most gratitude to them listening and watching, and them always around. Just much gratitude to the people who stay connected, who listen, who are on a path, who are walking, experiencing, progressing, and not condemning themselves. This is very important, not to condemn yourself, right? The condemnations have kind of been sown in the process of what we see happened through the ages with religion. The condemnation of always something's outside of you. You're always not good enough. Guilt and all that stuff comes in. So I'm going to start with this. I told you I was going to do off the cuff. We're going off the cuff. I have nothing to share on the screen. So we're going to go definitely in. Let me see when I started. I started a couple of minutes ago, so I want to see my time fan. I don't see the time here on my screen, and it's okay. But I just looked at it on my phone, so let's go in. Previous videos watch. I just did a video on the word coincide. Coincidence, word of the day, definitely a must watch if you're learning to and acquiring more understanding on how to and what not to say, do, use, because words are tools. They're AI almost. They're very technical. They can create and they can destroy. What the scripture says, the power of life is all in the tongues. And if the power of life's on the tongue, so is the power of the reverse part of life, right? Yeah, is in the tongue too. Little cursing can go on. Cursing, knocking yourself even off your place that you want to go by not knowing. That's where it would go, that lack of knowledge can destroy you. I hate to go into that drastic, we're using that word destroy because that's a lot of some of the stuff that we've talked about in the past. I can go all over the place. That's why I will harness myself, if you know, to say, no, I'm not going to go there, because that can go there and I can go there. I can go there. I can go there. I can go there. You know what I mean? I can do that. Definitely have a lot. So I'm going to share some different aspects of me, feelings, experiences. So let's go off the cuff today. We're just going to let it flow where it goes. Where the wind willeth, let it bloweth. Where the wind willeth, where the spirit goeth, right? So I went through, as a 19-year-old, a drastic change from previous in my teenage and young boy to older boy, preteen life, which I got into somewhat, but not totally. And right now I'm not going to start there. Maybe I'll do it another time. That kind of gets, that lower part of younger definitely gets me in a whole different aspect. This gets me into the awakened aspect, even though I believe they're both connected. I don't believe this is my first on the ground here. I really don't. In fact, know it. So in 1992, 93, I have a buddy that I know. We were in a church that was very, very founded in, might as well have 631 laws. Must be Judaism, right? But it was a Christian. It was just very, very dogmatic in its belief systems, in its doctrines, in its what they called standards that you had to keep in the church. You can't wear this, and you can't men couldn't grow facial hair. Actually, when I started, no TVs allowed in the church because it wasn't good. It was actually even mentioned, called the devil's pipeline to hell by, I won't mention names, by definitely was under that ministry. And was in it. And one of the things that was good about it for me was it took me from the previous, before 19, and I'm going to go back to 81. I got in it in 81, and what I'm telling you about happened was actually 92, 93, where I'm going to skip, I'm going to time jump back into 12 years later. Took me off the streets, took me off partying, substance abuse, all those things I was doing as a teen. Yeah, I wasn't the Mr. Clean, good guy that some people might look at and say, oh, you're Mr. Clean, you look like it, you look, like a really just a wholesome guy. Man, I was, as a teen, from the teen years to getting into this place of converting in the church, changed my life completely. And actually, within a few months, I was done with all of the stuff of the partying, drinking, and all when that any of substances. I was pretty much done, and life had switched around. I started going to college. I actually caught up and finished high school because that's how much I wasn't doing what I needed to do as teen, what we were told. But I know my path for a reason now makes a lot more sense to me. Why? Along with why goes also with the past of, like I said, I know that I've lived previously of where I've been. But anyways, so skip back into 92, 93. I can't remember exact year. I believe it's late 92, spring of 92. I go to my cousin's graduation, graduating through nursing school to become an RN. I'm married at the time, first marriage, have young boys, 3 young men that are boys at this time. And we are going through a process. So I go alone to this graduation. Ex-wife didn't go, children didn't go, they stayed home. I forgot what they were doing, they didn't go. And this to me was definitely arranged. This was a coincidence because it was meant, right? It coincided. It's all pronunciation, coincidence or coincide. How are you gonna pronounce that? Because the pronouncing is the truth of it. The vibration of the tongue, life and death's in the tongue, right? I left the graduation, and on the way home, I heard a voice within me very strongly say, go to this friend's house, because it was on the way home, and I didn't stop there. He was a few years younger than me at this time, but I think 5 years, and him and his 2 sisters shared an apartment. I won't go into their story before why they ended up there. That's a whole different story. But I was told to go there. I ignored it for a few blocks, and I had a green light. And then when I hit this green light, it turned red, and I was told, go to his house, in a very, very stronger, authoritative voice within me. And for me, I was, oh, that's God talking to me. I don't hear that much, but that was powerful. This making me vibrate. I felt that. So I was able to U-turn it. It was only 3 or 4 blocks away, went back, went to his house, went in. And as I went in, we started talking, and he was telling me he was ready to leave the city. He was done with the religion. He couldn't deal with it. He was rubbing his head like, man, there's too much condemnation, too much guilt, and I can't deal no more, bro. That was his words, and I'm sitting there taking it in, trying to comfort and trying to kind of just calm him down, just not make a sudden move, right? This is just something you feel right now, type of thing, trying to minister to him, what we call back then, where I was at. Little did I know, all of a sudden, this really white, bright light just starts shining and gets more, by the second, by the moment, gets more brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter, and it did. I've had experiences, and I told you I've had these experiences. So I'm sharing this experience with you. Through this process, as the light gets brighter, and I'm even talking to him, notice his head's down. I go, do you notice what's happening with this light in this room? To him. He goes, yes, I do. I see it. And then as it's still penetrating, it's feel like I'm getting filled up with this light. It's just like, just outpouring of this very powerful, vibrational white light that was making me shake. It was making me quiver, not scared, but like I'm being filled, like I was in another place, like Definitely now I could see with my knowledge and experience a different vibration zone that I was experiencing and he was experiencing at this time, right? I start noticing that these things are coming to me, these revelations are starting to pour out within me. It says, pick up the Bible and read it. And I start reading scriptures and I'm like, boom, 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 boom. Look at this. He goes, wow, I've never seen this like this. And he's like, me neither. That doesn't mean what we've been told, right? Yes, that's what I was seeing. So then later on, I put it down and I start walking and I start saying stuff that I can't remember what I said, except that I was kind of knowing things before they happened, almost very prophetic. And I said, I know things before they happen. This is going to happen. I started like having this like sense of knowing things, being really, really aware in the space of knowing things prophetically. In the Christian verbiage in that place I was at, it'd be like the word of knowledge, the 9 gifts of the Spirit still was what I would look at it. I wasn't taken completely out, but this was a process of coming out. As I was awakening, I was seeing and experiencing this, right? And I was really, really, really seeing and experiencing this white light being poured into me. And then as it's being poured in, after I couldn't put a minute time, because this whole process started at 9 o'clock at night. It felt like 10, 20 minutes. I didn't leave his house until 3:30 in the morning. And it felt like 10 minutes. I couldn't put a time in it. I really couldn't fit time. When I really started realizing how late it was, I was like, what? I just got here. That's how powerful it was. But it started expanding where I started revelating the word of knowledge, prophetic. And I started seeing the scriptures with a whole new revelatory things were coming to me. The more I read, the more I revelated. And this very first thing I got out of this, in the revelation of where I was at the time, that really changed me at this specific time, because this never left after this experience. 1992, 93, where are we at now? We're in 24, you're talking 31, 32 years ago. I'm not a newbie at this. And I'm going to share. I'm coming off the cuff. This is D-Boy coming off the cuff, heart, mind, and I don't know how long this video will last. This may be a long one, I'm not sure. Let it flow, let it roll off the tongue, open your mouth and let it be filled. Open your ears, listen to experience. Because this doesn't make me chosen. This is my experience for whatever reason personally. I think it's the ladder climbing of the other lives definitely set me up for this, because I had dreams about that later. 19 years later, I would have these dreams about other lives. But anyways, because that's another thing that started opening up. My lucid dreaming in the dream space started coming bigger and bigger. The prophetic word, the discerning of things, the knowing things before they happen, reading people like a book, but not in condemnation, in more having empathy for them and wanting to help them if the door was open to it. Remember, I'm still very immature at this when this happens. That's a process that we get mature. That's why I've been talking about the initiate. We're trying to initiate people. Remember, recently, people who aren't ready to be initiated yet, they haven't signed up. They're not in class, and you're trying to give them class. You're trying to give them some initiated degrees. They ain't even enrolled. They ain't paid their tuition. So what happens at night? Changed, because we had another brother come to that house. He told us 2 days later when we had this talk with him. He's nameless too. He said, I came to the house, into the room, and I seen your car outside. I knocked, nobody answered, and I just felt I need to go. He didn't keep knocking, he didn't even walk in. He wasn't supposed to. That blew my mind later as things unfolded through this process of what happened 6 weeks later. So we both have this experience, and we want to tell everybody this happened to us. Of course, many listened and were very, very enamored. Some listened and received at that place. and what the revelation of where I came. Like I said, this was a Pentecostal church that's very much, back in the day they would call it, it was under the law, very dogmatic on its rules and do's and don'ts and stuff like that. And I really started seeing that this Christianity that I was in, through this revelation of the word, I started seeing the parables in the New Testament. I go, they're the Pharisees. They're trying to make their own righteousness. That's what I got out of it. And I started pointing it out. Me with a lack of knowledge, thinking, they're going to get it and say, yes, I see it. When I started sharing it, few did. And I noticed it was mostly women that did. And they even would do things like we would gather together and pray with each other, and we'd prophesy together. We'd do these different things together, right? But these 4 or 5 women were really open and seeing what we were talking about. And it was verified by actually another preacher that would come through months after we left, that I met and actually started preaching at his church in the future, as he had a church in another town. Madera, actually. This happened in Merced, California. So anyways, so we go through the process. We're sharing it with people. My friend is sharing it more than I am. I'm a little bit more knowing, but you got to be careful. More than him, he was just going and sharing with everybody. I would kind of put my finger in the water and check the temp, and then stuff started coming out. And he got back to me that they were saying, because he was telling so much people, that the leadership came to me and like, what's Anthony doing, and they started condemning him for things that they said he did. I knew that the truth was spellbinding him. The 2 people I was close to were really close, one in the ministry and one the brother of the minister, connected to the upper part of the ministry, if you know what I mean. Names shall be nameless. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus. History and purpose is purpose, no matter where they're at and what they're doing. Well, anyways, they said we kind of were understanding what you guys got, which they call it the revelation of grace, but you got to let us go the way we go. So with a little bit of sharing and a little bit of knowledge, as I'm going there and hearing these messages, are just more and more not truth to me. It became the boiling point of talking to people and getting around to leadership. So they actually got me and him separated by different people and took us to different places and gave a warning. If you want to stay here and be part of this, you can't talk about this anymore. And for me, it just wasn't going to happen. And you go, why? Why wouldn't this happen? It just wasn't going to happen for me anymore, because I made the statement, I will go with truth and I will not sell it out for going backwards. That's my line. So if that's not suitable, bye. And it wasn't for them. I had to leave. But I wasn't willing to sell it out to stay. And then I noticed the judgment from people who were called my brothers and sisters and friends, who really cut me off, and that goes with it. This is kind of when you go this path, the suffering, the loneliness, and people who you thought were on your side can't distinguish from their dogma and their religious orders. And I would go, this is exactly what Jesus was talking about, the Pharisees and Sadducees. And that's where I was at. So I kind of, through this process, by end of 93, Anthony had left, went to another state. My friend called his name. Ooh, I didn't mean to call his name. Let me look what I did on time. We're still good, but I have gone a little bit. Wow, already going close to 20 minutes. So should I make a part 2? Should I just do one? I maybe do a part 2. I don't know. Let's keep it flowing. Wherever the flowing is, I'm going to let it go. So this process led me to, real quick, by the end of 93, I started going to this independent church, just somewhere to go and fellowship. Some of what was taught there was a little different than what I went to. It wasn't so dogmatic, but still the belief systems I was starting to come out with were still present. So one day, and she was a lady pastor, actually. Her grandson was a professional football player, used to play for the Raiders. Last name Fernandez, first name M. Fernandez. I don't know, Mervyn Fernandez, his grandma. So I'm going there and going for a while, and she says, hey, you're preaching today. And I was like, and what? The flow of this was, previous to that, 3 weeks before that, I was just kind of sitting quietly still, doing some praying, not knowing really about meditation yet. I haven't gone this is going to come later. I noticed that every time I would get to me another revelation and understanding, because I'm already knowing hell is not a literal place. It's a fear and torment within you. If you live in that low place of fear and torment, things can be hellish, right? I knew heaven wasn't a place you go to, that it was a mindset within, right? A higher consciousness mindset at the time. I wouldn't use the word consciousness at that time still had just coming out of the Christianity, and I'm at this place that still has some, but she says, preach. Well, I preached, for me at this time, I would call it a very word of life, because I was understanding, to me, the scripture, what would be a basis of it? The words that I speak are spirit and life. And I said, if you're not speaking spirit and life, that's not God's words, or that's not Jesus' words, because you're speaking death, which is the law. The New Testament would say it's the law. So you're speaking death, that's not Jesus' words, which are spirit and life. So I was very much giving spirit and life at that time with what I knew, revelating what I would know, bring out more revelation knowledge, really starting to understand that Christ was within you. And that was where it was at. And that people need to understand that Christ isn't outside them. That's what I was really starting to understand. A bunch of dogma and doctrines I was kicking them out the door. Daily, but I also knew that every time I would get this so-called these revelations, that I would go through some trials, tribulations. Almost like revelation, trial, and now I get it, because this is the things you need to go through the initiation of the price you pay to have this knowledge. So I would go through these different scriptures and not see them at all like I used to see, And doors started opening, and I started preaching at that church more than other folks, right? And that kind of went to the next level of the other ministers there, who were still kind of holding on to tradition, would get jealous because they would not get the feedback from the congregation. And this isn't bragging, this is what happened, that I would. It was like in the fact the teenagers would all come up to me afterwards and go, we like when you preach. And I asked them why. Because it's fun. You just what you say and stuff, it's just different. It's fun. It makes it exciting. We like when you preach. I go, well, you like the other preachers preach, and they gave me this look. Not really. They were, teenagers at that time could be very much tell you the truth. They didn't tell them that, but that's what they told me. And I said, okay, you like it. And then I noticed some of the younger people, and then some of the 20 and 30-year-olds always, oh man, that was so good. You give us so much hope. You're not putting condemnation on. So from there, but other parts of what was happening in the leadership of the ministry and down that was they were still having the mixture, what I called them, not the revelated life word. They still had a mixture of the death. So I couldn't stay there very much longer. I was there a good 2 more years after that, or a year and a half. I can't remember exactly. But I went to this other place I was invited to by this guy who visited our church and heard me speak. And he told, as it ended, I noticed he got angry when somebody had spoke after me, and he really went outside the door. And that door that he opened the door was not light. It was made a lot of noise. I wasn't speaking. I had went to the back to use the bathroom, get a drink of water. I seen the man walk by me, banged the door out as he went out, and I followed him out. I talked to him. I said, are you okay? Everything okay? He said, yeah. He goes, oh, it's you. He goes, you preach, you speak a word of life. We call it a kingdom word. And I go, really? I go, I've never heard that term before. He goes, I want your phone number and I'll give you mine. Can we exchange it? I want to take you somewhere where I think you'll really, really like it. He goes over in Modesto, which was in Merced. So he said, actually, tonight they have services on Sunday night and Saturday night. And he goes, you want to go tonight? And I was actually at the place at this time where I was free from at this weekend, because I did a lot of the raising of my children. I was there for them. Me and my first wife split up after I converted. My wife was raised in this church. She never experienced the world like I did as a teen. So by the time she was 27, 28, I think I'm 30, she's ready to go to bars and stuff. I'm not that. And we kind of separated. And I had a lot of responsibility with the sons. I'm not throwing her under the bus too. A lot of grace everywhere. But there's a process that happened through that. This weekend, it was a holiday weekend, I believe, because there was a reason they wouldn't come back to me Sunday night. They wouldn't come till Monday, and I go, I can go with you tonight. I'll go, because this is this is Sunday afternoon service around 1:15, 1:30, and we're wrapping it up. He goes, okay, I'll call you and I'll pick you up even. So I went to the service, and I went to the service, which was not the traditional church service. The whole thing was more coming out, and back then they called it a movement, kingdom movement. It was all over the place. These are people who believed that the word was revelatory and that you had to understand it by revelation, and they were slowly but surely taking dogma out of it. Some were deeper than others, though. Some held on to some stuff because it opened doors for me. After that, I met them and just hit it off with them. They were older people, and I was like 30, 31. They're 61, 59, 62, and they became my best friends because spiritually we were harmonized. And they were so happy to have me and the guy that invited me, who was a little older than me, God bless him and rest his soul, John, that we were younger, because he was a little young. He was probably close to 40, and I was 30, early 30s, 31, 32, 32 probably. So I ended up going there and left the other place because it just was not coinciding when I seen this place. Everybody speaking a harmonized word together where I was at that time. As a kingdom movement. They took me from California to Oklahoma to everywhere, and I opened doors up and I ministered and preached at these different kingdom churches around the United States for 30 days. I went on an excursion around the United States. Like I said, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Illinois, Indianapolis. Where else did we go to? Indianapolis. We went to Texas. We went to Indiana, to Las Vegas for meetings. Every place they had meetings, we were going. Ended up in Tennessee, and they had this huge Father's Day event that they had made annual, or people would come from that, and I got to speak there for twice on a 3-day convention where different speakers are there. They opened the door for me to speak more than twice. You have space for me to be aligned to speak twice, and they just opened doors. And it was mostly older people. There were some younger people as I met across, but there was a lot of older people, right? And I was in this for about 10, 12, 15 years, and many of them would die off. So by 2009, many died off. The ministry had closed. We're renting a church with just a few of us, because only a few were left at this time, because they were older. Remember I meant they were older. So anyways, it opened the door for me to go to the next level. And even from there, as I mentioned I had these dreams, right? I mentioned I had these great dreams. And we are at 28, if not 30 minutes now. So should we do a part 2? Let's do a part 2. I will return right after this, part 2.